Mayor Whitmer,
Here.
Councilmember Lempres,
Here.
Councilmember Lewis is absent, Councilmember DeGolia is also absent, and Councilmember Weist.
Okay, thank you very much. Do we have any public comments for items that are on the agenda? Yes, go ahead. Thank you.
My name is
Keep
Bob.
your comments for up to 3 minutes, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, we're recording.
Yeah, that's good. My name is Rob Austenberg, retired Major General of the United States Army. I'm not a resident of Atherton, but my in-laws are, and have been here for 47 years at 82 Belfort Way. I was looking at the last item on the agenda, and with regards to the license plate readers, et cetera, and I'm familiar with the company that you are looking at. I am not an employee with a company that does this type of thing, but I'm very familiar with one that's in the Bay Area here because Corps of Engineers uses them with their cameras on remote areas and dams all around California here. It transpons, it's got IoT on board, which is all the intelligence that can do the license plate reading or facial recognition, but it also recognizes people that are wandering around the dams and would blow them up or do something like that too. So I'm here to just say that if you want to get information with regards to B5 systems, I first heard about them with Hayward because they're having Tigers taking their town hall all the time over there. It's a brand new building. And so they approached B5 and said, can you do something for us? Well, all they got to do is put the intelligence inside the camera, the system. It's self-charging, it's battery operated, no cabling. They insert them in 15 minutes or 30 minutes. And so they said, okay, yeah, we'll do that. They put 3 or 4 cameras around City Hall, and then they decided, well, they can surely realize what taggers are going to do, because the first thing they get there is they got to shake something, and as soon as that ball started moving, cell phones rang, police were there and nailed it. So it's a very, very competent system. You can, let's say you put them over in Lindenwood and the 2 entrances there. You can put all the license plates that are incorporated in Lindenwood, and if something goes in there that isn't one of those license plates, it'll let you know. They're using them on the Keystone Pipeline. They see at night. You can lease them if you want. For instance, they're at Stanford University. They're using it at San Jose State. One of the police chiefs that has
That process also incorporates a vote center ballot printer. You can, for example, if you live in Atherton and you work in Daly City, you can actually vote in Daly City. It's a very complicated process because each city and each district creates a different ballot style. We have about 122 ballot styles that are unique to every address in San Diego County. So that's a challenge to be able to print that in any vote center. With this new technology, we can do that, and that is the on-demand ballot printer that will be able to do that. As I mentioned, we have central scanning and adjudication. It's extremely efficient, extremely accurate, and fast. We have our InterScan scanner, which is really the fastest one we've seen in the United States. It's 18,000 ballots per hour, and we anticipate that those ballots that come in at the end of the day, our tendency in San Mateo County and in most counties that are all-mail ballot counties is that the ballots come in very late. We start getting hundreds of thousands of ballots really 3 or 4 days before, and we need these high-speed scanners for that purpose. The actual process to vote, you will check in to a vote center. You will then be provided a number with your barcode. It will then issue your ballot style. You will put a card into the Android tablet. It will mark it. You will see your ballot. You will be able to mark the ballot and be able to print your ballot. And then it will be deposited in the ballot. One of the biggest issues today, of course, is safety and security. And whenever I speak about safety and security, you need to understand that in your elections infrastructure, technology infrastructure, there are two sides to that infrastructure. There's a centralized voter registration database managed by the state of California, which we obtain information from. And then we have the voting tabulation. What you have here, two separate technologies. They are separated by an internet. This is a closed system. It is online. It does not go through the internet. It is not connected to our voter registration system. So it is completely closed. It's never connected to the internet. It has all of the state certification standards. It has digital encryption to protect the data, physical hardware access control, strict chain of custody, and dual person authentication and hardware control on those devices. Talking about cost really quickly, this election voting system for the actual voting system costs the county $5.8 million. What we elected to do was to lease the system over a 9-year period, so we have a 3-year lease that can be renewed in 3-year increments. We want to take a look at how the system functions, and then we will be able to make adjustments. But there are upgrades that are coming to the system for the presidential elections, a brand new state certified upgrade, which is free of charge to the county, and that one will be deployed come March 3rd election. The other aspect is there's a lot of discussion these days about open source voting systems, and that also gives us an opportunity to see how the open source market develops. On that note, I'm glad to answer any questions you may have.
Yeah, so this seems to be all about the processing in the vote center, and the vast majority of our votes are by mail.
Correct.
I'm assuming you don't fill out an Android tablet if you're voting by mail.
No, you don't. The way the system works under the new election law, the Voters' Choice Act, 29 days before the election during the early voting period, we will literally begin sending out. We're anticipating approximately 450,000 ballots and 450,000 registered voters. Currently, we have 410,000 registered voters. It's the highest it's ever been in San Mateo County. We anticipate it will go up to 450,000. Each and every one of those registered voters will receive a ballot in the mail, and then you have 29 days. You can send that ballot from the ease and convenience of your home. It's really easy. It will have postage prepaid. So you do not have to go to a vote center if you don't need any particular service. Vote centers are highly utilized if you soil your ballot, lose your ballot, first-time voter registrants, people who need assistance, people who want to vote on the voting machine, go to the vote center. But by all means, you do not have to do that if you elect to vote by mail.
Following up on that, one of my questions was, you talk about how fast this machine can process votes.
There's two sides, yes, you did. There's two sides to the ballot process. One is that when we send out, let's say, 450,000 ballots, we're hoping that people are gonna start sending them in early. But everybody tends to wait to the last day. They wanna see how the election matures, develops, issues. So we get an influx of ballots, 300,000 ballots or so in a big election, the last day. You know? And then you have what's under new election laws, you have election day plus 3. So you can mail your ballot on election day, and it can be received by us up to Friday midnight. So all those ballots are coming in later, and they're being processed, but the actual tabulation cannot be completed until all of those statutory requirements and laws come in place. What it does help us, compared to the last election we had, where we were using old scanners, old technology, it really jammed up the system. It just literally, our system broke down during the election. We had redundancy in our system, but it was really very heavy, a heavy burden on them. What's going to happen now is that those ballots that do come in will be able to go through and be scanned and be processed much faster. Normally, even in a normal election, we do take 30 days to certify an election. But the real impact, I think, to campaigns and candidates is going to be on election day, because San Mateo County has gotten accustomed to having quick results posted on election nights. When you turn to a paper ballot system, that is not
Are you
going
sure
to
about
be-
that? I don't think we're accustomed to that, to be honest with you.
Well, I'd like to think you are, but
We
maybe,
get
maybe
dribbles.
that's,
Yeah.
We get dribbles.
yeah.
And you're still gonna dribble it out like that on election night?
On election night, it will even be longer.
It's even gonna be longer.
It will be longer. You
So we
will,
won't
all,
be-
all of the paper ballots that come
Instead of
in,
9:30, it's gonna be 12.
it'll be 2 o'clock. Yeah, I don't want to create false expectations, because keep in mind what's happening is all of those ballots that are voted in.
2 weeks late. Okay, so my other question, real quickly, I'm sorry. On your slide 6, where you're talking about the democracy suite, you've got the ballot marking devices and then a parentheses 500. Is that how many we are going to have? And then the vote center ballot printers 160, or is that the model number?
No, those are the amounts that we purchased.
Yeah.
In the actual election, we will deploy approximately 10 ICX, which are ballot marking devices, to 42 vote centers.
10
So we will deploy approximately 400 machines in a large election.
Okay.
And the actual ballot marking devices are the ones that are going to be put out in the actual vote center. But the numbers you see there is the actual number that we purchased.
Yeah. There's 2 different kind of printers. Got it.
Yeah, I did a couple of questions. This is pretty exciting, that's interesting stuff. But we talk about the improved services we'll get with this new service. You talk about audit trail for individual ballots. What are we doing to protect the secrecy of the voters' vote?
First of all, it is a requirement of the law.
Oh, I'm sorry, which is the requirement law?
Secrecy, ballot secrecy.
Okay.
It is fundamental to the democratic process. It's fundamental to the system.
Yes.
In terms of what we do and what the system does, is that number one, when you cast your ballot, you'll get an envelope. Your envelope has a barcode that lets us know that you are the registered and a signature. Lets us know that that barcode and that address and that person sent that envelope back. We have a record that the envelope went out. We have a record that it came back. Once the ballot is taken out, we have no way of reassociating it to the actual envelope. Same thing with the ballot marking device. If you go and you actually mark the ballot on a ballot marking device and print it, the device does not store any of your data. It simply just marks it, prints it. The paper ballot is the one that now has your actual vote. The ballot now goes to Election Central and gets scanned. Once it gets scanned, now it's in the system. We have been able to, with the audit mark system that we have, we will be able to track the ballot that was marked on that ballot marking device, not stored there, but when it went to Election Central, what scanner it got scanned on, where it got adjudicated if it needed to have some kind of voter intent issue resolved, and finally, how it was tabulated. And then we do a 1% annual tally or audit of the whole election, and we'll be able to go back and pull
so I understand, what I heard is, I think I got it for the mail-in ballots, you separate it from the envelope, and once it's separated, it's tracked, and there's no way to bring it back to the envelope. But going back to the machine again, where is that chain of custody broken? If I go to the machine, it produces a ballot, the machine doesn't store that information, but now I drop that ballot off, and the ballot's tracked, right?
The ballot, you will, when you go to a vote center, you will be issued, first of all, it will verify your voter registration status. You will then be issued a number that's equal to your ballot style, specific to your residence, where you live. That ballot style will then pop up on that machine. You will then mark it. It will then ask you to verify your marking. Once you verify the marking, the ballot is then printed, but it is not stored. What is stored there is that ballot was issued from that ballot marking device, but the actual vote itself, the selections that you made are not stored on that device. They're now on a piece of paper. They only get stored when they get tabulated. When they go through the central scanning, that's when the software takes over and it will be applied to precincts, towns, municipalities, etc. And we will be able to trace that ballot all the way through the very end through the auditing process.
And my other question is, you said that in the old system, the E system, there have been 3.7 million votes cast, and I think your language was, and not one ballot had ever been compromised.
That is correct, sir.
I'm not sure I understand what does that mean exactly?
That means the machines that we had for that 12-year period of time, ballots counted 3.7 million ballots. Not one of those ballots was ever compromised due to security issues. There might have been mistakes on the ballot, they might have been pulled out, but the actual ballot itself, that a vote was changed, that it was not counted for nefarious purposes, it never could happen on that system. It was a closed system. So we have an excellent track record on that. That's not to say that ballots that went through the system, if they were inaccurately posted, they wouldn't have been cast because they didn't process. But that's different than having a ballot compromised due to election security. Not one was ever compromised.
Thank you. That's uncommon. Congratulations.
I'm sorry, but I know there's a little confusion on compromise versus maybe lost, because I understand that in the past there have been issues of lost and then found. But as far as your system, you're saying that it just never made it to the system, therefore it's a perfect closed system.
Yes.
But if it was lost prior to reaching the system, that's all understood.
And it can happen. When you have an election, you have 500,000 eligible voters, you have 1,400 workers out there, and machines. There's a lot of moving parts in an election, and human error can pop in. It rarely happens, but it can happen. Most of the challenges that we have on election day are simple things like a cable not being plugged in, and people not being able to cast a ballot at the vote center. We would immediately go to paper ballots. So nobody's ever turned away. But when you have the amount of people and that has to interface with technology, there is a chance for error in every election. But if I may just quickly add, it's not if there's errors, but can an error happen? Because an error can happen. In fact, we expect errors to happen. It's how you mitigate it. It's how you manage those errors. Do you have redundant systems? Can you quickly go to paper? Can you resolve the problem? And we have to agree with that.
So you've mentioned that it's a $5.8 million system.
Yes.
And is that a cost to the county, cost overall to the county per year, or for the 3-year term, as you have identified kind of a lease arrangement?
It's really for a 9-year term, and it is split over 3 3-year option periods. So we have a 3-year term initially, and then if we like the system, we'll be able to renew it for another 3 years and move forward. And that is paid out of our voting system trust fund. Every election that we hold, every jurisdiction pays for their share of the use of the system. There is a 22-cent charge for our voting system trust fund. And that is based on, across an election, it's really down to two points. It's the number of jurisdictions that participate in the election and the number of registered voters. We take both of those, we figure it out, we portion it out to all of the jurisdictions, so depending on how many registered voters you had voting in the election, you will be charged at 22 cents. That is then put in an equipment, a voting equipment replacement trust fund, and it was up to about $5,000, $6,000. We also got money from the state, and then we were able to purchase that system.
You said $5,000 in the trust fund?
No,
Or the-
five, did I say 5,000? No,
Yes.
it's 5 million.
Okay, thank you, yeah.
So, got a couple of comments. So your presentation said you went out to an RFI, and I guess that you got ideas on these 3 different systems. Did you then go to an RFP to the first 2, the top 2, or did you just decide to then settle in on one?
We settled in on one, we used the latter. We could go with an RFI because as the chief elections officer, Mr. Church has the authority in an election to actually decide the best system. You go through a process, you use best practices, but you don't have to go through an RFP. You can request information. Now, the RFP is very limited, there's a reason for that. We only accepted those systems that were certified by the Secretary of State. At the time that we released that RFI, there were only 3 systems, and you saw them up here.
So what's his signature authority to make that decision?
The authority is under the elections code, and I don't have the citing of the elections code at the top of my mind.
That's okay. Don't
But we
worry.
do have the elections code that gives the chief elections officer or the registrar of voters in any county procurement authority to purchase election materials and equipment for the conduct of an election without having to use the county's procurement office.
Second question, to me, it looks like, it might be kind of a step backwards to, okay, we're gonna get some tablets, people will punch the tablets. I like the idea that no matter where you are, you can pull up your voting system, provided you're still in the county. But then going to paper and audit, I mean, you can do audits with cybersecurity, and I don't know why we didn't, and then, we're going to paper, yet at the same time, the county are talking about, we gotta eliminate paper invoices, or not invoices, but those little tab sheets when you go in. So we're generating paper when we're telling other people they should eliminate paper, and I believe the technology is there really to meet the needs and the encryption capability and the cybersecurity verification, to go that route. And to me, it just seems like a step backwards or a step to the side, because the other one generated paper too. To go that way. I personally, I would have rather seen a way where we can all vote on our cell phones, or other types of systems that we may have at home and vote electronically. That wasn't considered.
Mr. Mayor, you and just about everybody else would love the ability to do that. It is against the law. There are certain standards that's been established by Federal Elections Administration Commission and the Secretary of State. The regulations of the Secretary of State require that counties move to paper ballots. And the reason being is because of the change of custody. A physical paper ballot is perhaps one of the safest, even though it is antiquated, is one of the safest forms of ballot custody. So we don't have that option locally. We must use a paper ballot system. And it also, there are laws in place that do not allow the ballot to go through the internet. It's the only thing that we do through the internet is, for example, our accessible votes by mail. If you are a visually impaired voter, we have a system where you can actually, through a link, have the ballot sent to your screen readable device. You can mark it like you do here. You have to print it and then fax it back to us, or you have to send it in the mail. But there are no provisions that allow ballots to travel through the internet. It is at this stage of the game against the law.
Well, there are VPNs, you could have a secure VPN, but I understand you're required by that. I just rather see us spend $5.8 million on a step up technology personally than a side step. But anyway, that was an excellent presentation. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And if I do want to just emphasize that the investment is really in the background. If you don't see, it's those scanners, it's the adjudications, it's the quickness, it's the security of the system. That's really your voting system. That's the engine that's driving this election. And, the paper is important.
Okay, Carrie,
I apologize, Nick. It was-
I haven't.
Under this system, will the town's cost increase?
Good question. It's very hard to estimate an election, because an election, as I mentioned, is based on two factors. So it depends on your number of jurisdictions participating in elections. If the town is in an election on its own, and not sharing the cost with 60 other jurisdictions, your cost goes up. So make sure that when you call for an election, that you call it when it's an even year. In fact, under SB 415, elections moved to even numbered years for that particular purpose. Now your costs are spread over, your fixed costs are spread over 60 jurisdictions or the number of jurisdictions that participate in elections. But if you call for an election all by yourself, your costs are going to be high. And they're not going to be any higher, although costs by their very nature do cost of living go up. You will find that your elections are very, very expensive. But the other side of the question is your cost going up with respect to the 22 cents that's allocated for the voting trust fund? No, it is not. Your payment will continue to be 22 cents at this juncture per registered voter for each election. But don't get caught out there in an election by yourself, because then all of those overhead and fixed costs get transferred to the jurisdiction, and you can have a difference of an election costing you $30,000 if you're in with other jurisdictions versus $120,000. You really get hard if you're out there alone.
Thank you. I think I heard you say that 40 California counties are using the same system.
Yes, at last count, I think it was 42.
42, and how many counties are there in California?
There's 58 counties.
58, okay, yeah. So that seems like it's, a horse to ride, I guess. I was surprised that Hart, since you've had such good luck with them in the past, just didn't make the cut, but,
I don't want to speak bad about Harding at all. They're an excellent company. Their technology was not as robust as the division system. That's basically.
We'll cross our fingers that this new technology works, since everybody's rolling it out, and I'm sure they've worked on all the bugs.
Yeah, and quite frankly, when you roll out technology, all the bugs are not worked out, We're finding a couple of things that are popping up on screens, and what is that? Why is that there? And so we're changing. So this is new technology, but the most important part, and that is safety and security, and I can guarantee you that this is one of the safest and secure systems in the United States today, the nation today. There's extreme cyber threats out there. Every day, this nation's infrastructure is getting attacked. And that's scary. That's the bad news. The good news is that you have an equal and opposite force that's winning that battle right now. We may have an intrusion that occurs like in the city of Union City the other day, but we are ahead of the game in the elections field. But again, it's a highly vulnerable process, particularly with all of the malicious nation-state actors that are out there that are trying to compromise your election, from not only intruding into your voter registration database, but providing misinformation and disinformation on social media, literally purchasing thousands, if not millions of accounts to disseminate information that's incorrect on campaigns, on candidates, that literally can influence an election and rock the very foundation of democracy.
I'm sorry. Now I'm confused. You have some role in that? A malicious third-party actor buys a bunch of Facebook ads?
Do we? Well, we are in a position to combat it, working with the Secretary of State. Cyber defense is a multi-agency effort. We work with the federal government, the state government, local vendors. And the way, yes, to answer your question, we are part of the Secretary of State's Office of Risk Management and Cybersecurity. And so on our website, for example, we have a link to that office. If you see misinformation or disinformation on Facebook, on Google, on any of the social media, something that's absolutely incorrect, call us or go directly to that link, and it will be linked to the Secretary of State who will shut that site down. It's happened over the last couple of elections, where misinformation has been inaccurately posted on social media, and the Office of Cybersecurity and Risk Management has literally shut the site down and then replaced it with the accurate information, and anticipate that that's going to happen more, unfortunately. And that's what we have, and that's what we're doing. We're anticipating that those types of attacks are coming. And we have the Office of the Secretary of State, we have the Department of Homeland Security. We are constantly monitoring that chatter, and we're doing a pretty good job. But I anticipate that, this is going to be a challenging election. A lot of malicious actors out there. And I was at a conference the other day and said that China, for example, is using artificial intelligence with machine learning to possibly attack our elections infrastructure. That's a pretty heavy-duty investment that they're making to undermine, and it's not just that. There are other nation-state malicious actors that are investing billions of dollars in this effort. So, yeah, it's a risky world out there. I don't want to leave with the thought that your voter registration and voter information is at risk, because it really is not. I think we have a very, very robust defense system, and I think we're, both at the state level and at the local level, we're doing a very good job of defending.
I have one additional question. What does it take to get somebody's name off the voter reg? So people lived here for a while, then they move away for years, and when we get the voter reg list for when we're going through elections, people who have been on there for a while, and if I still know them, I say, did you ever say remove? They said, yeah, we told them to remove, and they never got removed. And so, could I understand really what is the process? For example, a lot of kids over at Menlo College, they come here for 2 or 3 years, they register to vote because there's a big activity, register to vote here and Atherton, this is where you are. Then they graduate and they go wherever, okay, but not here. So how do we get their names off the list so that we have an accurate list or semi-accurate list to a certain percentage?
That's a very interesting process, and so you have to distinguish between the active and the inactive role. When a person moves to another county, state, we get notified through the national network that change of address occurred. They immediately go into an inactive state. If they do not vote, or let's say they just don't vote, okay, they have to go through 2 election cycles under PAVA, and that's the Public Interest Vote Act. They have to go over 2 election cycles, and we send them a letter. You haven't voted, we got information that you're not living there, you got a change of address, so we'll send a letter out. And if it doesn't respond, if we don't get a response, we literally have to wait at least 2 years to remove them from the inactive role. They cannot vote if they're on the inactive role. They can be placed back on the roll if they prove or clear the data inconsistency that we have. But otherwise, they go into the inactive role, and within at least 2 election cycles, if they don't vote, they will be removed. We send letters out to confirm that, and it's a very technical, lengthy process.
Good, thanks, I'm glad we're doing something about it. Thanks. Any other questions from council? Okay, great, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any member of the public want to comment on this? Go ahead.
Just a question. Is there a place in the process where a person could look at my ballot and say, oh, you voted for Mickey Mouse, I don't like Mickey Mouse, and just drop the ballot in the trash?
Okay, could you repeat that question?
Mickey Mouse was right.
Is there a place where a person could look at a ballot and decide they don't like that ballot and drop it in the trash?
Yeah, right.
Yes, yes. But in order for that ballot to be properly cast and counted, it would go through a significant screening process in our office. The moment a ballot is received by our office, it's put through a scanner. The scanner takes a picture of your signature, and then that signature goes to a station where we have up to 5 people actually verifying that signature if there's any discrepancy. So if the signature matches and they put Mickey Mouse on there, well, we won't allow a vote to Mickey Mouse because he's not on the ballot or she's not on the ballot, but all of the other markings that they have would count.
I think you're just, there's questions. This question is, if he votes for candidate A, and it goes through your process, can one of your workers who looks at it and says, I don't like candidate A, throw it in the garbage can?
can one of our workers do that?
Well, that.
No, okay, well, I'm gonna answer your scenario, then go like this, we think somebody can't throw it in the garbage can. However, our process is that every live ballot has a two-person integrity process. So when that ballot comes through the door, there are two people all the time with the custody of that, handling the custody of that ballot. So it takes both of them to say, let's throw it in the waste basket for that to happen.
Are they from opposing parties?
We don't ask for parties. We just
So it could be-
So what we do is background checks and fingerprints.
Two people from party A can say, I don't like your vote, and collaborate and throw a whole bunch of votes in a garbage can.
I don't know about a whole bunch of those. I think we would be, because of the sanitized area that we work in and the two-person integrity, I think that's highly unlikely. Is it possible that type of collusion could go on? Highly improbable, but possible.
That's your question.
Never move the shredders.
No, walk out the room.
Thanks, sir.
Hey, my pleasure. Thank you very much.
Okay, so the next item, is not the license plate reader, right? The next item is the review and discussion of the status of the fire services fiscal review and provide direction on next steps. So this was number 2 in the pack. I've been advised that the agenda, had the wrong number, so the agenda was wrong, but the pack was right. Here's what the city manager told us.
What are we doing next?
We're doing the fire district.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. This item, as mentioned, is review and discussion of the status of the fire services fiscal review and provide direction to the subcommittee on next steps. As the council is aware, in 2013, the town put together material for our social media website, highlighting the various local municipal services provided to our residents. This material was created to help educate the community about various services provided, everything from animal control, the school district, mosquito abatement, vector control, sanitation, sewer transportation, fire, etc. As a result of the research into these services, the data highlighted that the cost of fire services provided to the town via the Menlo Park Fire Protection District, it just brought that to light. So over the next several years, the town and the district embarked on a series of conversations and meetings and research to more clearly define the cost of services and to balance that cost against the revenue received by the district from Appleton resident property tax. The district was able to provide data related to the revenue, but was unable to provide data breakout for the cost of services because they're a whole district providing services to multiple agencies within that district. They don't break it out specifically. So ultimately, to get at the data at the level sought by the town continues to consult to assist. This was the Matrix Fire Services study that was been done, tasks 1 through 4 of that study. A report was provided to the council and the fire board at a joint meeting in January 2019. That report is attached as Exhibit 1. The report provides a history and findings of the fire services report conducted by the town. For brevity, all of the 2019 report's attachments were not included, just the staff report and the task report analysis. So following the joint meeting in January, a subcommittee of the city council and the district's liaisons to the town were tasked to meet to identify ways to address the issues raised and improve collaboration. The town put together a list of opportunities, that's attachment 2 within the packet, that can be discussed by the subgroup. These opportunities were identified as partnership opportunities with the district. The intent of the list was to identify those areas of partnership that would assist with mitigating the equity issues that were raised by the town in the Matrix study between the cost of the fire services and the revenue provided. A meeting was set for July 23rd of 2019. On July 22nd, the district advised that they had discussed the issue with the board of directors and that they would like to explore 5 possible partnership areas. Those are listed in the staff report. These areas were emergency management services, the joint EOC or multi-agency coordination center, or MAC, communications infrastructure, specifically the after-use communication tower, LRAD and joint community notification system. That was something discussed at the joint meeting by that district and the town. And their UAS drone agreement program that they're rolling out in partnerships to various different agencies. The subgroup met on July 23rd to discuss that list, as well as the district's list. The town subcommittee advised that aside from item number 3 on that list, which was the communications tower, the items on the partnership seem to be part of the district's underlying mission of support for communities within the district itself, and were not Atherton following the board discussion, it was made clear that the district believed that any partnership opportunity offered to one of its sub-jurisdictions should be offered to all, and therefore the district must be prepared to do so. Therefore, only those partnership opportunities that were within the district's basic mission were considered. The town's list was largely dismissed in favor of that short and more focused list. The town subcommittee expressed some disappointment at that, and the district did not wish to address, and felt that the district did not wish to address the equity issue, and expressed the subcommittee would have to report this back to the city council. We're here this evening to do that, and suggest some next steps. So the matrix study identified 3 options for consideration should the council decide to move forward with next steps. Those were to look at and investigate detachment, tax agreements, and special legislation. Based on the results of the study and some subsequent conversations with the district, the item of tax agreement, special legislation didn't seem to be able to move forward, so that left detachment. The only option remaining would then be to explore that further around detachment by meeting with LAFCO. The meeting with LAFCO does not mean that the town would ultimately detach from the fire district and be required to provide alternative services. But we could provide those fire services in contract for its own fire service department. However, such meetings would begin more formal conversation around detachment, and should the town desire to move forward with that option, that's when we would start with LAFCO. So, based on that, the subcommittee is looking for feedback from the council for which way to go. If any.
Okay, any questions for George? I know we've looked at this a couple times, in different meetings over the last 18 months. With regards to the staff report or with regards to the matrix study or anything, is there anything that you'd like to ask George? Or?
The matrix study is dated July 2018, so it has been how many months ago? 15 months or so. Anything material changed in your view?
No.
Other than taxable income increase.
Right.
I'll add that. Sorry, George.
No other questions for George, and we'll take public comments on this. Are there any public comments with regards to the fire services discussion?
Mr. Mayor, I do want to note, you do have a public comment letter from the fire district.
Yes, we did, and it's printed out for everybody, and it identified a letter to myself and George and the city and the town council, and it identified a number of investment plans that the fire district has just notified us about. And so, the list is quite considerable, and we will take that under advisement as we decide to progress, and if we progress, I'm sure this would be part of the discussions with the LAFCO. So, any public comments on this item? It's here for you, Chief. Okay, we'll close public comments and have comments and direction, discussions for staff. Who'd like to go first?
I'm happy to. If the issue is really, are we willing to, should we consider taking the next step? Is that what you're looking for guidance on that?
Yes.
That issue? Yeah. So from my perspective, it does seem like little has changed since we started this process, and that there's a structural issue in the way the fire district is financed that does not work to the benefit of the residents of the town of Atherton. And I have believed that, and I continue to believe that. I obviously don't blame anybody one way or another for that, but it's just sort of a fact. So from my perspective, my comment would be I think it's worth pursuing, to explore.
Anybody else? Yes, Gary.
I'm gonna, just because this letter I just read it, but it implies that there have been actions taken by the district that actually no plans to expand that station, nor did they have plans to expand that station at the time when they purchased the property. So, I mean, I guess unfortunately, you know, you have to read into what's being said. And that's been one of our problems is, as we've seen in national elections and such, of disinformation. But when you actually drill down on the information you're provided, they're upgrading all the stations in Yazoo. I think we all understand that we have one station in the town of Atherton and service comes from multiple stations within the city of Menlo Park. Therefore, the upgrades to the stations in Menlo Park, because of the aging infrastructure, but we have a lot more buildings that are older than the buildings that they have. And they're going to a different model based on growth within the district that, in fact, the growth within the district's not within the town of Atherton, and that's one of the problems, is that we've been pretty steady with our general plan and what we have residential usage, and we completely understand that the district's focus has changed, and I think that that's, you know, when I look at the letter of response here, and how we've been trying to work with the district to try to talk about some of the inequities, because our cost contribution to the district is increasing, and our level of service is frankly staying pretty stagnant. You know, it's been a frustrating process, and I've heard from residents and other people that even as of this morning, the former director explains that this process has been a waste of money from his perspective. I don't think it's been a waste of money at all. It's a frustrating process. It's not a process that, in fact, is commonly done. But it's done, and it's tedious, and it's not fun. But unfortunately, it's a process that we're required to do in order to try to, you know, create a balance of inequities. And, you know, and we haven't spent a lot of money on this process. We've tried to do what the process kind of sit down with the district and you see. You know, everybody here will probably agree is that the district's changed considerably, the whole area's changed considerably. And that's one of the reasons why, in my belief, it's important to look at this as representing the town of Atherton. We're never going to have a controlling interest of the board there. Therefore, our word is always going to be the softest. There's 5 elected officials there. At most, we've had 1 member of the board, but that's 1 of 5, and we know what 1 of 5 is. And since, in fact, our contribution to the district is second highest, and we have the lowest emergency response. So, second highest, lowest emergency response. Then, you know, when we talk about some of the equipment stuff, I mean, the district is loaded up on equipment and infrastructure and bodies because it's changing. We've talked at length with the district related to, you know, them wanting to create a fire academy at Station 1. You know, that's a huge investment. Why does the district need to create a fire academy? These are all little things that, as a small player in the game as far as number of residents, does it make sense to have a fire academy for us? We don't control that. The board of directors for the district controls that. So it's a contribution to a bigger picture component that realistically, there's already a fire academy in the town. Why do we need another one? So, you know, I'm interested in going forward. It's been a process, it's been a tedious process, but I think that in the interest of the taxpayers of Atherton, it's important for us to do.
First off, this letter has at the bottom of it excellence in service, and I would like to point out that that's what we've gotten from the fire district, excellence in service. And we appreciate that, and all of our residents do. But this was about looking at the finances, and the fire district did not create the problem. It's a Prop 13 issue, okay? However, there are ways to further investigate this and see if anything could potentially be done. Going over the list that they have, I agree with Carrie. station in number 3 in Atherton, and they did buy land next to it, but they never joined the land so that they could expand. They've kept them separate. Also, in a fire study that they did, where it pointed out how they could improve services and things like that, this was not one of the targeted items for being upgraded. And in fact, the chief has said that to us several times. Now suddenly we're doing that. I just think that the fire district does a good job. They do a good job for us, and they do an excellent job around the world and around the country. You know, they're Johnny on the spot in all the locations when there's a hurricane or a natural disaster or a man-made terrorist disaster. Our fire district have people that are there. They're extremely well trained, and they do a lot of great stuff. They run the CERT program, you know, to help the communities also in the event of a disaster get you know, be able to prop themselves up until the first responders can actually get there, thereby making the neighbors or your neighbors first responders. And that's something that's, you know, many other cities are starting to do that, but our fire district is one of the first in doing it, and they run an excellent program. I've been through it, and I really appreciate it. But I think that the discussions moving forward haven't been real productive for whatever reason, and taking the next step allows us to perhaps have further discussions and maybe you know, improve some of the items that we have discussed and get down to brass tacks with regards to this. So I'm in favor of moving forward with this as well, especially since even the study that we did showed a wide gap of what we were paying for and what the value of the services that we were getting in that as compared to other communities. And as property tax values continue to go up, that gulf between the value of the services and what we're paying is going to widen and widen and widen, and you know, to where it's going to be a very big gap. So again, I'd like to point out services, excellence in service is exactly what the fire district does, but I think we need to take the next step. Anybody else? It's not, so you have your direction of 3 people.
This is a very complex issue. It goes to the heart of Proposition 13, because each Atherton resident pays in property taxes approximately twice as much to the fire district as they pay to the town of Atherton. And that discrepancy is being called an equity issue. That's part of the equity issue. The other part is that the revenue that the fire district gets from Atherton residents as compared to the costs that the fire district bears in relationship to Atherton residents is out of skew. And this matrix study goes into that in great detail. And I think that it was worth the money to engage in the matrix study and obtain that information, because the fire district was not willing or able to provide it to us. But I don't think that this council has the responsibility to try to correct that. That's a Prop 13 problem. I think it's a very complex issue, because there's also issues related to the fire board and its decisions. Here we have the highest paid fire district in the state of California, partly because of the tax dollars they get from this community. And how is that managed? It's not really our responsibility to judge that. It's the fire board's responsibility. But I think it raises some questions, and all of us have been contacted by residents about those issues, and that's a big reason why this has been raised. I think that, in my opinion, the fire board would have much better judgment to make some amenities with the town of Atherton and provide benefits to the residents in Atherton that they're not currently providing. There are a few things that we've suggested, but it's not our responsibility to determine what they should do to meet the obligation that they have to provide the services that they provide. Although we have made some suggestions, and that's not to question the quality of the service that we've received from the fire board as residents of Atherton. I think everyone agrees that the service is excellent. In my opinion, we've got big issues to deal with on this council, the largest of which we're very actively dealing with by rebuilding the Civic Center. And this is a distraction from those and not something that we can really correct, because the heart of the problem goes to Prop 13. So it's not something that I would continue to pursue.
Well, I agree with all my colleagues that it is a very complex issue, and that the residents of Atherton have received excellent services from the fire district. I'm a recipient of, their services, where their chimney fire broke out in my house in like 1994 or something like that. So, or maybe earlier. Anyway, so that's not an issue. The issue is the Prop 13, that systemic problem, and we see it that in another JPA that we're involved with, having the library, that Atherton pays a lot for that, and it's a disproportionate amount. But I look at it as a business decision. It's really kind of to analyze your cost outflow with what you receive. And we receive excellent services, but we're such a small community that we don't receive our proportionate financial share. Now, I think Board President Corrali's letter that we just received today, outlining all of the investments that the fire district has made, plans to make, and going forward, trying to link it to the benefit of Atherton. The disparity is still there. I think it's amazing that the fire district has this much money to do all of this. And like was said before, Atherton hasn't expanded with commercial, retail, or other huge growth patterns. Our houses have grown, but with those houses, the fire systems and the safety systems of those new houses reduce the effect, the proportionate effect of fire. So in one sense, we and our residents are making our town safer from fire just by the rebuilding. Plus, we're increasing our tax revenue basis, which then more than 50% of what we get goes to the fire district. So to me, that doesn't seem equitable. I don't like only the three options that we have: detachment, the tax agreement, special legislation. If anything, I'd like the special legislation to reformulate Prop 13 and the percentage that we contribute, and maybe going through the LAFCO process that could be flushed out, or it could be exposed, so that we would have something to go to the legislature to say, or we could negotiate. I know that there's been negotiations with other jurisdictions in California where the fire districts in the jurisdiction, negotiated a new formula themselves. But also, the things that we had suggested that the fire district invest with us to detach, but, and I don't want to send that message. And I don't want journalists or it being put into, if we go ahead and vote to go take the next step with the LAFCO process, that the headlines would be, Atherton Council votes to detach from the fire district. That's not what I want. And I would hope that that would be very, very clear to everybody, that it would be just more of a information gathering opportunity instead. Does that make sense? So, I think we need to do something.
I just wanted to say, just a tidbit, I think as a person that's one of the liaisons, I completely agree with Elizabeth in the sense, and Rick, and frankly everybody out here. The process of detachment is just part of the process that we have to go through to even get to a level of a conversation, because we've had the experience that the district and the directors of the district, and we understand the fact that they don't have to do anything. And frankly, until they get forced to do something, they're not going to do anything. Why would they? Because if you take, as I've heard a few times, money out of their bank. Well, there's 10 million reasons why we should be representing the taxpayers of Atherton, because nobody else is. And therefore, I know it's a struggling fight related to, we like the district, but we don't like how much we're compensating the district. And the district's growth pattern is it's not just the dollars and cents for upgrading, stations and so on and so forth. It's the equipment, it's the personnel. Our debt is increasing because their growth is increasing. So even though we're contributing a large share to the district, our ending goal keeps getting farther away. And we have to get to a point where the district and its leadership is willing to sit down and talk to us. And if they're not willing to sit down and talk to us to talk about money, then this process has only one direction to go forward, to get to a point where you're gonna get to a point where you're willing to talk to us. And if you're not willing to talk to us at that point, and we have to make a decision, and the residents have to make a decision, do we detach from the district? Then we detach from the district, and maybe the option is we contract services with the district, or whoever will pay a fair, reasonable share for the level of service that the town residents expect. So that's where we're going, but it's a frustrating part because none of us up here feel good about sitting here to talk about firefighters that are doing a great job, but it's that inequity that we're really, you've got to get to a point to have a conversation.
I'll say everybody else says, because I agree with what everybody else is saying to a large extent. One point I want to make, and I think we all know this up here, but I've been clearing out all our statements. The issue is not actually a Prop 13 issue. It is a legislative issue that followed from Prop 13. So we don't need to amend the Constitution of the state of California or to otherwise undo Prop 13 to address this. So it's not that intractable.
We get legislative support.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. And the other point I make, I do completely agree the fire service that we've received has been excellent. And I would just note that it's also come at an opportunity cost to us, and that because we are paying the residents of Atherton collectively are paying for far more than they are receiving. There are things that are not being done in the town of Atherton, whether it's the schools or other places, where that money could be spent, the tax burden would not be increased collectively. So that is something to look at, and I think it's something we should be aware of. That's a big part of the reason I think we should continue to explore our options here.
All right, so exploring the options in the LAFCO process can feed the other opportunities because it helps us get additional information and to flesh things out and verify all the discussion items. With that process would then go in, for example, make sure that the other, if in fact something happened and we weren't contributing the same amount, the fire district still needs to be able to provide and have the wherewithal and the financial capability to continue to provide the services to the other districts if they don't contract directly back with us. So I think it's a good step for us to go and get started, discuss, and so I think you got 3 people saying, and other 2 saying, yeah, we should think about doing something, so that perfect. Thanks, okay. You
So
want to say
if
anything
we're
else?
going to go to LAFCO, we need to vote to decide to do that.
No, it's just
It's
give
direction of subcommittee, subcommittee to go through the process.
So it's not an application to that.
No, there's no application, any application would have to come back.
Yeah, we have to understand
I'd like to
everything.
get some more information.
Right.
But I want to really, again, make it very, very clear, at least from my perspective, that by taking this next step, directing staff to, go to LAFCO, sit down with them, and get some information about it, that it's not a vote for detachment. Okay?
Okay.
Right?
That's clear. Okay. All right, moving on to item number 3. On your agenda 2, 3 in your staff pack, review and discuss the use of automated license plate readers and security cameras and provide direction to staff on what direction we should go. And Steve McCauley, our chief, will be handling that along with Joe Wade, our commander. So Chief, you're up.
Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Rogers, thank you. Commander and I are going to tag team and present, just to give an overview of our presentation, and briefly discuss what the reason we had in November and earlier this year that brought us to this presentation. I think it's important to know where we've been and take a look at the history of cameras and acquisitions, what we currently have, and what we're proposing, and then I'll go on and cover the different technologies that are available to us, and we'll discuss some recommendations. So with that, underway. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everybody. So why the need for crime fighting technology, and why now?
Sorry, Joe. Yes, sorry.
So why the sudden need for the crime fighting technology? You gotta realize that for the past 8 months, we've been working a series of burglary cases that occurred over roughly a 4-month period from November of 2018 to February of 2019. What we discovered during that time is that the more crime fighting tools that we actually have, the better chance we have of actually solving the crime. And while security cameras and ALPR aren't the end-all be-all, they are tools that when used in combination with other traditional tools can definitely improve our ability to fight crime. So let's talk a little bit about the burglary. So you see down there on the first slide, in 2018 we had 22 residential burglaries. And I will point out a conversation I had before this meeting. The philosophy that we have is one burglary in Atherton is too many. So don't get the impression when I'm talking like 22 is a big deal. So in the grand scheme of things, we have had previous years where we have had 20 plus burglaries. But if you go down to the next paragraph and look, it's really that pocket of time between November 2018 and February 2019 when we had 20 residential burglaries. 20 residential burglaries in a 4-month period is a lot. Some serious, significant work went in, and despite the efforts after months and months and months of work by our detectives, we are happy to report that we believe at least one of the burglars from that 4-month period is in custody in Southern California. And I'll actually give you some of the details that I can't give you some of the specifics, but I'll paint a good enough picture that you can get an idea of how the technology works. So the combination of technology, perseverance from our detectives to help us actually get a link
to a person that we think is a match, and I'll explain how. We traded information with Bay Area agencies. We actually sat in this room with at least half a dozen other police agencies who were, we believe, all experiencing the same sort of burglaries. We believe that it was the same people. We use geofencing. For those of you unfamiliar, I will summarize it as geofencing helps us to identify a device, like a cell phone, and we tie that cell phone to a specific location at a very specific time. Surveillance did play a part in the ID of one of the people that we think is a suspect, and I'll explain how. So we'll go back to one of the burglaries that we had in December. But first, you gotta realize what we're looking for when we go. So burglars leave some things at the scene, whether they intend to or not. They leave objects, it could be a wallet, it could be cigarettes, it could be sunglasses. Off those objects, we get fingerprints, we get DNA. And not always, sometimes we can get that information, sometimes we don't. And then what we have, which what we didn't have years ago, is something called, that we like to call the digital breadcrumbs that we can follow. Basically, if I bring my cell phone onto a property and I leave with my cell phone, depending on what programs I had used prior to, there may be information out there that shows where I went at a particular time. And you still have to get a search warrant to get that information. You still have to have probable cause, but a lot of times that information exists. So we'll give you a rundown and summary of the burglary. So in December of 2018, a burglary occurs. We write a geofencing search warrant and identify a device that we believe to be a cell phone at the exact date and time of the burglary on the property. In January, we moved to one of our northern neighbors, without naming any names, in a town in North San Mateo County. There was a burglary there. We believe it was the same suspects. After talking with them, they collected some property. They swabbed it for the presence of DNA, and they sent it to the crime lab. We come back to our burglary and what we're working on. We write another geofencing search warrant, and we're able to actually track the device and see where it went right around the time of our burglary. The device went to a Bay Area city north of here. It actually went to a couple different locations. One of the places it went to was a gas station mini mart. What do they have in a gas station mini mart? They have a security camera. Video was taken of two possible suspects at the mini mart. The funny thing is, well, it's not funny, but we didn't get the information until March. And that's just months after, because in the search warrant process, property crime, nobody considers that an emergency, so it just takes time to get the information. We shared the still images of the suspects with the other Bay Area County agencies, but we didn't get any hits. Nobody could recognize the faces. Just a few weeks ago, we got a call from the same Bay Area agency that took the DNA swab. And they actually got a hit. So 6 months later, they got a hit. That was a positive hit for a subject who was arrested for burglary in Southern California back in March. That person was with 3 other people. One of those 3 people, we looked at a booking photo, and we believe it is a match for the surveillance photo that we took from the gas station. So you can see from that, like I said, it's not the end-all be-all, but there's a place for security cameras. We used to have security cameras back on Frederick and Mohemus, and this is almost the view that you could actually see from the camera. It was a little bit higher up, a little bit more distorted, but we did have cameras there. So if you're asking, why did we put the cameras there? We put the cameras there. We put the cameras there because we had 2 residents that were willing to actually use trees on their property to actually house the cameras. Both cameras are no longer there. They were no longer operable. They were IP cameras, old technology, and have since been removed. And we haven't looked to put them back, really just because so much time was spent and resources keeping the cameras operational, we actually had an officer who was the one who had the technical expertise to be able to do all that. And we spent too much of his time doing that, not enough time working patrol. And the program ended up phasing out. The pros of that program was that we had a live video feed into the dispatch center, and I'll tell you, we didn't solve any major crimes, but what it did give us was the ability to go back and look and get vehicle information. So at least we have a vehicle type. If we got a good enough image, the cameras weren't that good at night, but during the daytime, if there was a daytime burglary and a car passed by, we could at least tell the troops a make and model and color of the vehicle to be on the lookout for. And the pros of having that is it's an after the fact evidence gatherer, and it really allowed us to communicate with the residents, and the residents felt like they were contributing. The cons, like I mentioned, is just significant staff time. You know, we're not in IT, we're not IT guys, even though some of our youngsters know quite a bit about that stuff. It's just something back then that we spent too much time doing. Current town-owned safety cameras. So in 2015, we actually extended the cameras from where they were originally from the 2005 purchase, where we got 12 security cameras at the PD and at the town facilities. They're nice because they provide real-time footage to our dispatchers. Our dispatchers are sitting there, they have the screens in front of them, and they can see what's going on. And it helps us internally as well in our armory and in our evidence room. So in 2015-16, the town installed 10 cameras at the parks. And it was really, you know, this is the one place in town that people come to. I mean, there's people that go to school here, obviously, but the park is the place where people come to that don't live here and that live here. It's like the one hub in the community where people can come and they can get away in a public place. So we put one at the park entrance, put a camera at the park exit, there's the Felton Gables gate, the main house parking lot, the area outside the Little League, bathrooms, and then in 2016 we put in was 5 more cameras, one in the pavilion parking area and 4 over in the east parking lot. There is a cost, obviously. Our IT folks we spent roughly $10,000 in 2018 on costs just for maintenance and servicing through Interwest. Obviously, the pros of public safety cameras, improve public safety. You know what, bottom line is if somebody has bad intentions and they have reason to believe that there's a camera in the area, they're less likely to commit a crime. We can monitor it remotely from our dispatch center. These days, you can literally put cameras just about anywhere, as creative as you can get. The video is very high quality. And the cons are obviously the expense. There are some good deals out there, but they can be expensive. And sometimes, you know, the technical expertise required to work some of these systems it can run from simple to very complex. And then there's potential vandalism. There's, you know, if you can see a camera out and it's accessible and you have bad intentions, it's not uncommon for cameras to get vandalized. And then of course there's the privacy issues. People don't want to feel like they're being watched. Especially they don't want to feel like they're being watched by police departments. Our resident camera registration program, it's actually grown quite a bit. What it does is it allows residents to register their camera with the police department. We started out for a long time and we didn't have any. We grew from 7 and then after about a year to 14 and now we are at 71, which is good. And you ask, you know, what does it do to have a camera registration program? It saves us a little bit of time. After a burglary occurs, we go and we do what's called a neighborhood canvass, and we go, you know, roughly 4 or 5 houses to the left or to the right. But if we have in our dispatch center a pre-designated list of where we know officers can go to get cameras, we're going to go to those places first. there, Anthony, I think I hit it wrong, but.
Yeah. Anthony to the rescue.
While you're doing that,
He's got a smart
can I ask a question?
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
What about rings? You know, the ring device, is that, those seem to be very popular around.
Yeah, they're very popular.
And how does that fit into the camera system?
So, the ring cameras are more of a, something you put on your front door.
Yeah.
That, personal security for yourself, generally just gets your property. The difference with the cameras that we had before with these residents is that they were putting them in a public view area. So those are more protection type of deals that are convenient because it'll notify you on your phone. You see everything that's going on at your house. In some instances, you can actually talk to people while they're.
But they're not connected to PD.
Correct.
You could not connect them to PD.
Correct, but there is a program out there. In fact, we just had a detective go to a training today in San Francisco County, and they are doing they're working, and I believe it's with Nextdoor, so that residents can go and post, certainly, say you got a package that got taken, you can go ahead and post something. There's actually a system where Ring says, we're gonna look at what you're posting, make sure it's postable, and then if it's what you say is, we're gonna let everybody in that neighborhood group see it. So, that is.
One issue with those, like Ring, Blink, kind of like system, if you can imagine, we already have a huge false alarm problem in town. And those are alerting constantly if they were to come to dispatching the hospitals. So they would be, but they're very valuable tool after the fact for residents to get alerted, especially if they're not home, call us. So we can
The benefits of the camera registration program, I think just having a camera in general is sometimes you get a face, clothing description, gender, probably the most important thing that we got out of the existing surveillance security cameras that people had during that time of burglaries. The burglars were smart enough not to show their faces, but we were getting time frames. We couldn't see the faces, but we could see them. And with the good time frame, that actually helped. I'll pass it to the chief.
over to me. So I think the planner did a good job briefly of laying a foundation and illustrating the benefits of technology for detecting and deterring crime. And it's important to know that all the technology is available. Still not going to stop crime. The more tools that we can have available enable us to better solve crime. So we'll start with what I want to go through is the options that research available. Automated license plate readers, ALPR. And how do they work? So what they do is they're similar to my portable radio calling dispatch to run the plate. So they're a camera that's capturing an image of the plate and the vehicle, and it's taking that image and converting it to digital, and then running that plate against the database that's provided by the FBI. That's one from California. Every state has a version of that, and that's how they're getting the information. And if there's an alert, that alert then comes to dispatch. And what it's telling us, just so you know how it works with the plate, it's only giving us stolen vehicles if the license plate is stolen, ambulance alerts, gray alerts for missing elderly, wanted persons related to the registered owner of that car, vehicles that are under investigation, and the terrorist watch list. And several concerns with these cameras is privacy. We're going to address that further. Misidentification is an issue in the officer safety training. As an example, for the state ferry system in Washington, I manage the video monitoring and ALPR system. It's processing 11 million cars a year. As you can imagine, most of the problems that we had were making sure that it was about the stolen vehicles. We weren't taking mom and dad out of the car at gunpoint, as you can imagine, the stolen vehicle or others. But that's part of the process of training, and it can be overcome. Then, of course, there's financial budget impacts. Technology is expensive and it's expanding rapidly, but because it's expanding rapidly, the costs are now coming down.
Chief, you mentioned that ALPR's alert for a stolen vehicle. That vehicle has to be reported.
That's to be reported stolen. So just to give you more details, that's reported stolen by an agency to put into the NCIC system. It's done by a dispatch like our dispatcher, entered into the system. These all have to be entered. But one of the problems or concerns is they also have to be, once they're contacted and recovered, they have to be taken out. It's not uncommon for agencies to forget to take them out, and that's where our verification process will come in, just so we avoid, an unintended consequence. So privacy concerns with the data, only law enforcement personnel have access to this data. It's not given access to the public, nor is it able to be made from a public disclosure request. And we have policies that strictly guide how this information could be used. And just to give an example too, if for some reason there was unauthorized use, or say an act to get the information, all you're getting is a digital image of the plate meeting numbers. There's nothing you can do with that. There's no personal information associated with that. I can find out the personal information through NCIC, but a layperson could not unless there was another sophisticated level to get in that. Is it possible? Maybe. Is it probable? I would say no.
What about GPS information associated with when it was captured?
There is GPS information that's, again, only available to law enforcement that's stored in their system as to when and where that vehicle came through which camera.
If it got out, and somebody was trying to track something, you just said, if it gets out, all they get is a picture, but they also get, would get GPS information to know whether or not somebody was visiting somebody at a specific location.
Well, they wouldn't know who it was, though. You're just getting a plate. You'd have to know
Yeah,
the
yeah.
plate is no good. But
Well,
what I
you might
mean is,
recognize the plate.
Yeah.
the probability is extremely.
No, I understand, I'm not criticizing it, and I've read your policies, I don't have a problem with it, I didn't know if it had GPS, I assumed it did, but, okay, thanks.
Just to follow up a little bit, does that mean that these are not subject to subpoena and civil actions?
No. And there's also, immigration is on the forefront, and all the concerns this information cannot, as cited by California Code, used for that purpose. And again, governing laws that monitor the privacy requirements of entities with ALPR information, prohibits public information from being sold by these agencies, and requires that our operators use it for only authorized purposes. As an example, with our current ALPR system that we have on our patrol cars, we have an administrator assigned in other departments that are detective sergeants. The commander has administrative rights, but that is it. So the access to the information has to be for an investigative purpose. It has to be approved, and it has to be tracked by case number, and it's available for all.
Doesn't mean we wouldn't get requests for the information, but
Correct.
releases different requests.
And then access to the system, like most now, even like when I go to Bank of America, to access my account, now there's two-level authentication, which is required by FBI, so that they are then sending you a text with the code to put it into another level of security. So, and again, we're not collecting personal information. We're not collecting, for the most part, we're not collecting images of people driving the car. The cameras may capture somebody, depending on the time of day and the light. They may capture a face, but there's no facial recognition involved with this, and they do capture an image of the vehicle, which is helpful. It's the way that the software is set up. If we have information, which we commonly do with investigations, it may not be a plate, but it could be that it looked like it was a Dodge Charger, red. You can go into the system and see the information that's obtained, mine the data, and find out if we have some Dodge Chargers, and then go from there and track it back. We don't transfer the information to the federal government. Right now, our ALPR systems, our information is housed by the Northern California Regional Intelligence Center. They do that at no cost to us. About 50 different Northern California agencies contribute to this. The value of having it in a fusion center is that then other agencies can also use that information to determine if suspects that they're investigating happen to be located in our town and tie back to our cases. As you can imagine, with body cams and others, the value for the vendors is storage of the data. So there is expenses related to that. You can't store it on site. You can be stored in the cloud, or you can go with make those business decisions that you can make based on recommendations that we give. remarks, the security cameras that we have currently in town, and if we were to expand it, that video footage is only in public areas. It is public, it is subject to public disclosure. But again, too, we only have one dispatcher in our center typically. They're not actively watching, not actively surveying people here in the park or other areas. It's typically, if we get a call, they can bring up the image here in the park when an officer's responding. They can get a sense of what they're not walking into, or more likely, it's after the fact information that we can then utilize. And we have had some break-ins out in front of the pavilion and others that we've been able to utilize that video to monitor, identify the suspects and monitor the vehicle.
So you've had, ever since we put we had a lot of car break-ins. And then we put up the cameras, and we caught some people.
We have had some break-ins. Again, it's, the number of people that come through the park locally is extremely low. And we do have signs that we're under, security cameras here in the park. So we have had some issues. We have had some verbal disagreements and those that we've responded to, so we can identify people that way. So the different types of ALPR cameras, there's the fixed situation, and that's an image there of what it typically looks like. Those 3 cameras, and depending on the type of intersection, you need a camera facing each direction. So for most, it's probably at least 2, if not 3 or 4 cameras that you need per intersection. It depends on the type, the location, the speed of the traffic, and the volume of the traffic. And for our mobile ALPR that we have on one vehicle right now, we have on one vehicle right now, similar, same situation as he's driving up and down the road, it's continually scanning and running license plates. And if there's a hit, the officer in the car gets alerted, he confirms that with dispatch, and they can make a stop. And our plan is, one of our recommendations when we get to the end, is to add this as our standard operating equipment for each car, so as we order it, each car will then become equipped. And whether we, recommendations to put cameras around town or maybe working in concert is another level of security within our perimeter.
And with that ALPR camera that we currently have deployed, have we gotten hits, and has that resulted in stops?
Yes, we have.
We have, and ones that I remember were, an example, as I said, was a stone plate that had not been removed from the system. But the officers, you don't know for sure, but you're trying to make sure you're using the best data you have for unintended consequences.
One more question, Paul, but how long have we had that one car equipped? Has it been a month, 6 months?
No, it's probably been a little over a year.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I'm always the last chance. Always in the packet.
So again, we have one patrol car right now. The approximate cost
Okay,
is,
we're getting the presentation.
the approximate cost is $19,000. And again, as this technology is more refined, we have more competition, the prices continue to come down. And it's just another tool for us as we're canvassing neighborhoods, looking for stolen vehicles and looking for wanted persons. For the fixed ALPR costs, and we use Piedmont as an example, we ran our night field trip to Piedmont. They've deployed ALP cameras around their perimeter as they're surrounded by the city of Oakland. They've also deployed some security cameras. And just to give you a sense of the cost, and this is just an average, and I would say it's probably going to be higher than lower. It's $35,000 per intersection for 2 cameras, and more than likely if you go 4, that's our range from $35,000 to $65,000. Of course, beyond that, there's always maintenance, there's always licensing, and there's always technology upgrades. So it just gives you a sense per intersection about the cost that we're looking at. In working with our patrol sergeants and officers, this is not a definitive list, but this is a list of recommendations if we move forward establishing a perimeter around the town of Athens and 10 different intersections. That can easily change based on budget, based on recommendations, but it gives you a sense that it would be $350,000 to maybe $500,000 to equip those intersections. And again, with that, you're looking at maintenance, licensing, and again, maintenance and upkeep.
And even with those 10 intersections, we're still very porous.
I was just gonna say, so what was your criteria?
Well, the criteria was looking at, because we are very porous, but looking where the highest volumes of traffic are coming through town, where the most likely routes
some of these intersections are shared, joint intersections, so there might be other jurisdictions that we share those intersections with that might contribute to camera at that location.
Another option,
Well, if I could real quick, you know, when we put up lights, like we did at Encinal, for example, wouldn't it be smart to put in a license plate reader and include that as part of the cost then? That's what many communities seem to be doing, because it looks like you're trying to hit a number of these key intersections. So as we upgrade the lights and things like that, we should just include a license plate reader or a video camera right there so that we have that covered.
Usually the lighted intersections are pretty high volume and a critical ingress and egress points, so you have to consider.
Excuse me,
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to leave, I'm sorry. I need to eat.
You want to make any last
I
comments?
just, Portola Valley, have you talked to the people of
Yes, we
Portola
have.
Valley? You know, they've done this
Yes.
for their small town. Because there's like one in, one out kind of a thing. And have they, reported any significant improvement? You know, because they had a rash of burglaries, like right before we had the rash of burglaries. And so has that deterred?
I'm not aware that they had any success in finding suspects because of that, but there is a definite turn factor. Communities will be up, these are advertising that you have it, it's like a burglar coming through a residence, looking, that one looks susceptible, maybe not. They're gonna probably move on hopefully to another community that does not have the technology. And they're keenly aware of the equipment that's available in other.
So the other thing is, you know, I've had residents on my street, which is Alejandra and El Camino, because we have the colleges and schools and everything. And there's tremendous cut-through traffic there, but they want, I think we need to really figure out the criteria if we're gonna do this, you know, in certain areas, because everybody's, I think, gonna want something on their block, kind of thing.
And there is a better option, I think, coming.
That's what yes, I was hoping that we would get that. I apologize. Thank you so much, thank you for your presentation.
We'll miss you.
Thank you, appreciate that too. So, sorry for the interruption.
No problem. All right, have a good meeting.
Okay.
So another additional option to supplement the LPR is also a security camera that goes with the LPR. There's different vendors, different products. The one that we looked at is a hardwired LPR that's hitting just like normal equipment. And then the security camera itself has an onboard DVR and it holds the video footage. And so the fact that we need it, it can be accessed remotely or it can be accessed from the DVR itself. So there's pluses and minuses to that. The cost for what you see there, and what we looked at, is about $11,000 per unit. And, you know, again, it would be probably more than one unit to cover an intersection adequately, so you're looking at, again, maybe $25,000.
Yeah, and I'd like to just interject there, Chief, that, you know, I was talking to George and we got to this item, and we have similar cameras at our construction site. We took a picture from the construction site, which is taken, you know, on top of your building, and we looked all the way across to something that was parked over by the train station. And he zeroed in, and you could very clearly see the license plate on the car from that far away. And so, you know, I think that that type of technology is really, where, you know, will aid in what you're doing, and also, and I realize the picture is not a real-time picture going through a database, but I think that the two combined probably would be is a great idea.
They are. The benefits are you're not only getting identification of the vehicle, but then you're also looking at who's in the car that's matching a suspect description and the type of car, so there's benefits. The next option we looked at, and that we're very interested in as are multiple agencies across the country in this area, is what's called a drop camera system. And I know Councilmember Goglia has had some experience looking into the system as well. We've been in touch with the vendors. The advantages are it's standalone. So for $2,000 a camera per year, the clock company comes out, they install it, give you some about 50 miles per hour for traffic, 100 feet away to look at the plate. But as we talked about expenses, if you're looking at about $50,000 for one intersection, you would be able to deploy 25 of these cameras around the community. And that's what a lot of agencies are starting to look at. The information and the data is stored in the cloud. It's our information. We're the ones that can access it. I believe there may be other options to store it with things like we're currently storing for information. But this is an option, again, that's, Flock has agreements with 31 states. Their goal is by the end of next year, to deal with 50 states. They have an agreement with CLETS, and like I said, the information, or CLETS information, every state has a version. It's administered by the FBI and the NCIC, so they're getting all their agreements with each state. And the information, CLETS is California Law Enforcement Telecommunication System. It all has to do with all the wanted information and place information that comes from the FBI through each state.
So could we, if we were to do this with Flock, arrange for the images that are captured by that camera that they're maintaining to be run through in real time on a like a NCRIC database?
So it is real time in the sense in that Flock downloads every 24 hours from NCIC. And if there was something in the interim, like emergent, we can through CLETS and NCIC enter that in.
So it may not be instantaneous time, but it is within close proximity. And my real issue was, do we have to manually go and run it through a database, or does the camera system?
No, it's doing it for us, but the NCIC downloaded. So again, what it does is, from the download that it hits, sends an email to our dispatcher, an alert. They're able to verify it through our CLETS system and dispatch it out that camera came through both Bemis and the Alameda, and so we can start to move in that direction. And then again, we can mine the data if we have burglary and we have a plate, or we have a car description, the date and time, we can go back to that data and start doing some investigative analysis.
So just correct me if I'm wrong, but the ALPR cameras that we have on our mobile unit and that you're proposing that we add to each new mobile unit we acquire, that's instantaneously doing a hit against the database.
Yes.
So there's very rapid response if there's a hit, whereas the Flock is a time delayed kind of thing.
I believe there's a time delay. We can verify that with the vendor. It's just, the difference would be that as I'm running your name or vehicle license plate number now, it's live in the system. They're downloading every 24 hours or something.
I see. So if it was downloaded that there were, these are the license plates associated with stolen vehicles, that's in their system, and that as vehicles are running through the intersection with their camera or at the park entrance with their camera, the hits are occurring.
The hits are occurring and going right.
Okay, so that's pretty good.
You just have 24-hour delay to get the data related to this.
If something changed with the 24 hours that I downloaded, there could be something that we would
That's
miss.
pretty good.
Likelihood is probably very low, but again, if something occurs that we need to get something in the system, we can direct it through CLETS via NCIC.
So if there is, for example, you got 24 hours worth of data, it's uploaded at midnight, at 3 a.m., there's a burglary that occurred in Redwood City, that car's coming this way, it's not in that system, and it's not gonna, ping the system will pick it up until you enter it via CLETS into the system, and then it.
Well, and you gotta remember too that, say, a car involved in a burglary, it's only gonna hit because it's only taking stolen vehicles.
Right.
If they put wanted associated with registered owner, so it's somewhat limited.
Right.
But if it's uploaded at midnight on day one, on day two, or whenever, it'll be there.
Correct.
Right, so if it runs through the intersection, once it's in the system, it's gonna get hit. That's pretty good.
Any known maintenance issues with Flocker?
Not that we know of, and again, another advantage of Flock, and I don't know, you stock Flock, I'm not recommending Flock, they just have to be on the forefront, I think some others are coming behind. The benefit is, unlike the big systems that you're hanging on the poles, it's gonna require maintenance, so within this $2,000 per year, they not only do it in
Chief.
What did you write, Joe?
So Chief, just a quick comment and maybe kind of a question, but solar powered, I understand that perhaps the solar powered ones don't take the same video quality as something that's not solar powered, and I also would like to point out that many of our streets are tree lined. That also affects the solar power, so the energy and the consistency of that energy could be, over a period of time, vary, and we're not putting battery systems on that, so while I understand what it is, and maybe it's good, for me, I mean, we're really serious about it. And we really want good quality data. I think we need to have hardwire, and we have a network that runs around town, and we should hardwire and have power there, as opposed to relying on the sun. I appreciate the free part, but you know what, I don't think, even if you buy 100 of these items, I don't think that we're going to save a hell of a lot of money. Yeah, go ahead.
Like that you said, I've looked at the clock. I found them, because a resident referred it to me, and I live on a cul-de-sac, and we look to try to deploy, a camera on the cul-de-sac that everybody on the cul-de-sac would then share responsibility for. On the entire cul-de-sac, there were only 2 locations where there was enough sun to power the camera, and it just turned out that those didn't work for those 2 homeowners, so we didn't do it. But in the course of investigating that, they actually prefer to have their cameras hardwired. So the same camera will work whether it's hardwired or not. I think the benefit of them, from my perspective, was that it was, $2,000 subscription fee for both the hardware, the software, the use of the cloud, and they do all the maintenance, so you don't have to worry about that. And I think whatever we do here, this is new technology, like you guys have said, and it makes the most sense for us to try something out, sort of like in a pilot, to see what we think about it.
And that's one of our recommendations, is just to hit on the mayor's comments. Talking with the vendor and the test drive, we show that it doesn't need direct sunlight, it needs daylight. It only needs 2 hours to charge the batteries that are on the camera to then power for more than 24 hours. And according to them, there's no denigration of video quality or abilities. And we can verify that. Again, part of our recommendation, what we demand, is to deploy 2 of these at the entrance and exit to the park. We have 60 days to look at it. It would cost us a thing, they came out and do everything. And within 60 days, we can monitor and ask more detailed questions.
But even here, the Vice Mayor pointed out that Flock says they would work better, and it's better if we hardwire it, so I don't know why we would want to waste any time with looking at the solar energy one when we know, let's get something that's proper and we know will work. Because we do get overcast days that last and there's no sun for 2 hours to charge anything. And then suddenly that's when something will happen. And as you pointed out, Chief, or Joe pointed out for us, these robberies, the big uptick on the robberies seem to happen in the November to January timeframe. And it rains a lot then. It's very overcast. We have fog. And I just think that, if we're going to do something, let's just do it right. Let's just do it right.
So just because I think we got a lot of hoops to go through before we decide exactly what we're going to do.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we're going to have a 6 o'clock hard stop or not, but I know there's people waiting to talk. I do have a question. There are a lot of our neighboring jurisdictions have cameras.
Yes, they do, it's coming up.
I saw that. I'm not sure we have time to hear it, but I saw it. Are we able to take advantage of those cameras?
We are, and so, just jumping to that. So what are other communities, and we talked about Piedmont, Menlo Park, because of the problems they had in Bellhaven, deployed LPR cameras in response to high crime issues that they were having. And if we have a similar plate or a similar issue, we can look at that information.
So is it also the case that we can do nothing and still get the benefit of all the work that the neighboring communities are doing? And I ask that because maybe unique of the council, I do have some concerns about the civil liberties and privacy side of this. And, you know, is there something we can do where we're not doing it, we're still getting 80 or 90% of the benefit?
Well, we could
because we're
utilize,
getting on the neighboring
we could utilize the benefit, but then we're not going to capture if that vehicle or whatever was going on was in our community, if something happened. We may be able to track if they came through Menlo and they maybe investigated something. There's that possibility, and so certainly, that's the advantage of this information being pooled and papered in one place. Our investigators and detectives can then look at that and they can say, well, hey, the car was spotted in Menlo Park last month. We would then go to Menlo and say, well, you have based on this car, we're trying to investigate and see if we can connect the dots.
So Chief, you know, we are to take some time, but, as November is coming up, why don't we do a quick, you know, make a quick evaluation of the hardwired ones, because that's what seems to be recommended, and you know, so we consider that and consider actually expanding from 2 to a few other areas. I mean, we could, if we're saying that this is gonna be our high crime season, which it has been traditionally, let's do more than just 2 in the park, because there's not gonna be a whole lot of house robberies in the park other than your house. You've got a gun.
So our recommendations are, you know, looking for direction from council. Interest moving forward. Of course, there's, as Councilmember Lempers mentioned, and the goal is, there's a lot of issues still to resolve. It all based on how much money are you willing to spend, would you like to spend. Starting with some test drive of some technology to see what works, what doesn't. It's probably going to be, from a hardware standpoint, I think it's going to be not possible to deploy it prior to November, but one thing that we didn't mention that we currently utilize from NICRIC and others, there is equipment available for us to borrow. During our last hit of burglary, we borrowed portable ALPR cameras, we borrowed full cameras, and there's equipment that we can borrow, and certainly can do that, and will. Flock can come within a couple weeks and install again. I'm not recommending Flock total, but I mean, other law enforcement agencies that are blocking the Flock, I guess, is that there has to be some merit to the system and to utilize it, and I think it's worth doing. That coupled with also taking a look at our current public safety cameras that we have in the park. We recently did an audit as per our policy. They were installed over 5 or 6 years ago, and I think we need to take a look and invest some money in our system here in the park. And of course, we'll have a new system at the new building. And so that's kind of where we're at with this.
So why don't we take public comment? A lot of people have been sitting here, I assume that they've been waiting for this item. We'll take that, and then we'll come back for the council comments. We need to be wrapped up by 6:30, because we'll lose another council member. I'm sorry, we're gonna go. Carrie was the first mayor that went over.
Yeah, I was.
Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Nelson Lee, and I just have one quick question about the ALPR camera. You mentioned that it can capture GPS information and also date and time. Will you be able to retrospectively, let's say if a crime has occurred, you can, in multiple places, you can run a query on the database to identify if a certain car has.
Yeah, just to clarify, when you talk GPS, I mean, the camera's where it is. It's detecting when that car came through that location, at what time, and what direction.
Right, so let's say if certain places the camera is located in a certain less residential area that allow us to, and in multiple different residential areas that has crime happened, will you be able to use that to establish that that car has appeared around that time that the crime has happened?
Absolutely. I mean, if we have vehicle description or the plate number, the beauty of the cameras is it tells us that this car was at this location at this time, which is another piece of evidence and let's tie the whole thing together to solve the crime.
Without being the car as part of the list of like 10 items that you show like being stolen or things like that.
Right, if it's not in that list, but if we have, you know, a red Dodge Charger with this plate that wasn't in there yet, or just the car, we can go back, look at the information and start looking at red Dodge Chargers, and you can go through class, and about how many registered in San Mateo County and start drilling down. These are part of the investigative techniques, all the time consuming, the things that we utilize normally, and they can be very successful.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, Chief Commander. I'm a resident of Atherton. I'm John Medverlo. I live at 67 Marymount. And most of the discussion today is focused on how these cameras can improve resolution of traffic crimes and also detect people who are driving through the town whose license plates already appear in the database. I want to add one other potential huge benefit for the residents of Atherton and of neighboring communities that you may or may not have already contemplated. It starts with a personal story. And my daughter was biking home from Sacred Heart on August 28th when a motorist ran into her from behind at the intersection of Stalvey and Colinas, coincidentally. The motorist then scolded my daughter, who's 14, for being run over by the motorist and then left the scene of the crime. Officer Jitter responded, but we've not been able to identify the motorist because the camera that used to be at Stalvey and Colinas is no longer there. So as you think through the investment in building out network cameras, I want to encourage you to think about huge benefits to bicyclists who might live in Atherton or neighboring communities that these cameras could represent. Because if motorists know that they're being surveyed with cameras, they might be more careful. This particular woman was on her phone, wasn't paying attention, rear-ended the bicyclist, who thankfully was not seriously injured, but it could have been a lot worse. So thank you for studying this. I hope that you can also include key bicycle routes, namely like the Selby Lane route that many people take to Atherton, and perhaps there are other bicycle routes where it makes sense to implement this technology. Thank you.
Anybody else?
Thank you. My name's Dave Wilson. I have two questions. One is, how long will the data be retained? And the other is, who's going to have access to it while it's retained?
So to answer the first one, per our retention schedule now, it's 1 year, and the only people that can have access to that are approved law enforcement personnel.
So when I've read your documents in regard to that second point, it sounds like it's law enforcement in Atherton plus other agencies, plus even civil agencies. Is that not
There's no civil agencies involved, and so if the information, if the business decision is for it to be housed with NCRIC, like our current mobile ALPR data is, yes, other law enforcement agencies have access to that information as central housing.
Is there a reason why you retain it for a year rather than, say, 30 days?
Yeah, the law requires it. We didn't write the law, but the law requires that all of our video data is retained for a year minimum.
Okay.
But in addition to that, you know, rather than 30 days, a lot of things happen with time, and it could be up to 6 months, just like the commander mentioned with similar burglaries. We tie these pieces together. It gives us the ability to come back and take a look and make sure that we haven't missed something.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Same with their video cameras that were on their uniforms, and I don't think Joe, I think the chief has it on now. The data from those have to be retained for a period of time that the state legislature decides what that is.
Okay, because both of these issues tie to the fact that there's potential problems with retaining this data and letting it leak out to other places. That's always a concern. But, all right, thank you.
Any other public comments?
So,
Come on.
Well, I looked at the policies.
Can you give us your name?
Oh, sorry, Jerry Schwartz. I'm a resident of Palo Alto.
Okay.
I looked at your policies, and I was wondering what is the penalty if somebody violates them. There have been incidents, I've been told, I don't know, where authorized people use the ALPR data to track their spouses. Now, this is not a good thing, but suppose one of your officers did that, what would be the penalty?
Well, there's two different things. First off, the likelihood of that happening is extremely low.
I understand that.
You have to be an authorized user to enter into the Class NCIC system. So if someone were to do that, it's identified by the terminal that they used and whose credentials that they were using. So if that happened, there's two things. There's potential criminal charges, both federal, state, local, and then administratively, up to including termination, more than likely termination for that type of misuse.
Okay. Any other public
And to
comment?
be clear, it's a lot harder than the chief just made it sound. For instance, a city attorney,